Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles post-game show. And it feels like we have done a lot of games in this 15-game season for the Eagles that have been after a win, but they have felt like a loss. And boy, has that never been more true than after this game. The Eagles do snap their 3-game losing streak. They beat the New York Giants 33-25. But if you were hoping to get some kind of get-right game or feel-good game, like reverse the vibes, boy, was this not it. The Eagles enter halftime up 20-3 after a disastrous final possession of the first half, and then things just turn around in the second half. Boston Scott runs into Olamide Zaccheaus and fumbles the ball away on the second half kickoff. They're giving up long plays to Tyrod Taylor. Jalen Hurts is throwing an awful pick six just because Dallas Goedert slips. I mean, you've got Nick Sirianni taking bad timeouts. You've got a weird field goal decision. And the game ends with the Giants having a chance to tie the game if they get a 2-point conversion. And if only for their terrible clock management that was even worse than the Eagles, maybe this game would have gone into overtime. But I guess the bottom line, Devon, is that the Eagles are still one game up in the NFC East. But to watch that team with Hassan Reddick yelling at Nick Sirianni at the end of the game with the game on the line, play a game like that, knowing how much they needed a feel-good performance, boy, is it hard to believe that this team is serious in any way about doing anything in January.
The only way to forget this one, not fast-forwarding into the postseason, is just hoping the Sixers play well tonight against the Miami Heat without
you got a long
Joel
night ahead of you. I
Embiid.
appreciate you being with me.
Oh, no, I'm glad to be here because this feels like, you know how you guys said last week when I joined you, I had a lot of things to get off my chest?
Yeah.
They wrapped it up right there in 60 minutes, all compressed in
totally
one
agree.
game.
That game felt like their season.
The
in a way.
entire season. Yeah. And that's exactly what it was, because we're sitting there and it's 20-3 and we're still looking at it. Well, pardon me, 17-3 before the field goal. And we're looking at it saying, all right, good things, but that last 50 seconds was horrible. And then as the last 50 seconds unwind and they get the gift of the penalty for the Giants touching the football while Jalen Hurts is on the ground trying to get up to spike it, which he should not have been in that position in the first place, because I really thought, and I know we're going to get into it, I thought, okay, smart play. He's going to pull the ball down. He's going to run out of bounds, give them more time, because if it wasn't going to be that before the ball snap, I'm thinking, oh, they can probably take 2 shots to the end zone here. Maybe 3, depending on how quickly they move. But he runs, and I say, okay, fine. There's still going to be about 11 to 12 seconds when he runs out of bounds. No! He thinks he's going to bulldoze through the linebackers because he can squat 600 pounds with no timeout. And then what happens? They get the gift. And after that, though, Bo, it just continues to spiral. You mentioned the Boston Scott part, because I can't blame Zaccheaus because, Simmons is a big guy. He got shoved into him, but the ball comes loose. All right, they score right there. Then they come down and they're out of it right away on the next possession. Nothing happened.
Ugly 3 and out, yep.
Nothing happened, and it just continued to look poorly. They're forcing the ball to A.J. Brown. They're not looking for anyone else. They stopped giving the ball to DeAndre Swift. And Jalen Hurts does not look good. He throws the pick 6. Adoree Jackson goes down the right sideline. Then he just tacks on, let me just horse collar this guy. Let's just make it even easier.
Which I kind of respect.
I do too.
Probably the fastest
at least he caught him, right?
Season. Yeah, exactly.
Right. But, man, this one was just, we're in week, 15, 16?
Week 16, yeah.
Week
game
16,
15,
game 15. And that was the season all wrapped up into one. They still have 2 games left against the Cardinals at home next weekend. And then, of course, the Giants the following weekend to wrap up the season before they get to the postseason. But, man, when we thought maybe, just maybe, they could, again, put up 30-plus points, make it feel good for them, not us, for them in the locker room. Now you got your defensive end yelling at your coach. You got your wide receiver.
We got a lot to get to.
You got your other wide receiver trying to calm the coach down. He's yelling back at him. The player, the wide receiver, decides, let me just walk away, because it's a mess, man. They win, and it's still a mess.
You know what's a problem? When the wide receiver is walking away because, this is too much drama for me.
That's right.
The wide receiver thinks this is too much drama.
Yeah. Devontae Smith.
Yes.
But you're right.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't
He's like,
feel
oh,
like
I don't want to. I
it's
never
just,
say anything
it's
like
too
this.
much already. It's too much. It's Christmas. I'm just going to back up.
All right, just to reset things.
Man.
This is Devon Givens. You know that. I'm
Hello.
Bo Wulf. We're going to hear from Zach Berman in a little bit from Lincoln Financial Field. He will spend some time talking to Nick Sirianni and being in the locker room. We will have plenty to talk about. There's so much in the second half to like the unraveling to get into, but I will never in my life, if Nick Sirianni coaches this team for another 25 years, I will never, and Jalen Hurts leads them to 10 Super Bowls, I will never forget that possession at the end of the first half.
Yeah.
You talked about it. So it is 17-3. The Giants' DeVito offense has done nothing. So there is nothing to be afraid of about them getting the ball back. They get a Kenny Gainwell first down. They run the play starting with 58 seconds left. They don't call a timeout until 31 seconds left. They let basically 20 seconds just roll off the clock. They're at the 28-yard line.
And folks, Bo and I are looking at each other without saying anything because we knew.
Which is actually, I gotta say, like the enjoyability of watching the game with you is as you and I are not saying much, and just every now and then we're just like looking at each other like, do you see that? And we're like, what is going on? 31. They let 20 seconds run off the clock. There's no reason to be scared of giving the ball back to the Giants here. Okay, now it's 3rd and 6. If you don't convert it, you're gonna have to give them the ball back. Who cares? DeVito hadn't thrown the ball more than like 4 yards downfield. You probably want him to be in a pass-first situation. You might get a pick 6 out of it. MB Super Chat says the junk fumble, which may be fair. Okay,
gotcha.
So then you've got the ball with 1 timeout left, 31 seconds left, and then you talked about it. There are no timeouts left. 2nd and 15 from the Giants' 15-yard line.
Yes.
Hurts does what he normally does, which is like all of the talk about Hurts as this like super dynamic runner has never really matched my eye test. Like I think he's an incredibly efficient runner. He has this great way of like finding the direct line to where the most yards he can get is and getting there. And that looks like what he's doing. He's going out of bounds. And then like the most brain dead, like
Miles
Kirk
Sanders
Cousins
play.
taking a knee at the end of the half when he doesn't have timeouts, when he forgot that he was supposed to spike the ball type thing. You're a quarterback. You cannot make this mistake. He sidesteps and tries to stay in bounds. What are you doing? And then they got extremely lucky that the Giants get called for a delay of game penalty and they end up with 3 points out of it. They should have had a chance to take another shot at the end zone. And I'm sorry, at that point, it seemed like the game was in hand, and maybe this doesn't come back to bite you. It's fine. But for a team that tells us nonstop, Nick Sirianni is incessantly insisting that this team, all they do is preach situational awareness. We rep this stuff all the time. I'm sorry, you boned the timeout. Your quarterback boned going out of bounds. Miss me with that anymore. Like this, if you want to tell me what would a poorly coached team look like, that is it.
Yep. That's exactly it. I don't know what they were doing. Again, we've talked about this before. The time that I've been on, we covered a lot last week, and it all showed here tonight. Yeah. Because again, when we spoke about Nick Sirianni last week, when I joined Bo and Zach, we were talking about following your head coach. Your head coach is the leader, whether it's the leader of the player on the field, which is Jalen Hurts, and they encapsulate who he is. They follow who he is, even the veterans. It's also the head coach. And when the head coach does not call a timeout. You had 2 timeout or 1 timeout left and the clock is running down. Call timeout because you have an opportunity there inside the 20-yard line to maybe take 3 shots towards the end zone. Maybe you get 1. Maybe you get a pass interference and the ball's at the 1. No one's stopping the push.
We saved that for the last play of the game. That's
sorry.
When we won.
Yeah, my mistake. Or excuse me, his mistake. Because why are you not calling timeout? And then when Jalen Hurts does pull the ball down, very smart, very situational, with pulling the ball down to run out of bounds. My idea there again was he knows the situation. He knows they have no timeouts. He knows.
You think he was going for a score?
After a while, yeah. Oof. But I thought he was going out of bounds initially.
Oh, yeah. I thought, yeah.
So he knows the score. He knows they have no timeouts. He knows how much time is on the clock. That's why he pulled the ball down as quickly as he did, because he's going to do what he always does. Make the smart play when he's running. And we've seen it over and over again. He slides. He doesn't take unnecessary hits. He jukes here. He runs out of bounds normally when it's like, maybe he could have gotten a few more yards there. But I respect the fact that he just said, let me save my body here, live to play another down. This one was live to play another down.
Yes.
And he did not and they got lucky to get the extra 3 points, which, by the way, Bo, mattered in the end.
Yeah, it did.
It was
Shockingly.
35-28.
Yeah.
Look, they still would have had to score a touchdown. However, it mattered in the end. And this team right now, I don't know. I wrote in my notes and I just put WTFFFFF, couple of question marks, is going on here because that should have been easier. Again, it wasn't about us. Sure, make it look better to us when it was all said and done. But for that locker room and that sideline, they needed a comfortable win. They needed something to build off of to make themselves feel better about themselves, even though they don't play a meaningful game
And it
until
like they
January. And the same thing happened once again, where this is the team that we've been seeing over the past month and a half where they have not looked good. And right now, this is a problem. And people are saying, oh, you guys are over it. Well, I don't think so. You watched what we watched.
I mean, is there anybody here who was happy with that performance?
I hope not. I hope not.
You know, it's hard to win, but it's not that hard. That was the worst team in the league by DVOA, the Giants. 32nd in the league, okay? That team is trash. And to your point about the microcosm of the season, it was exactly like that because the first half of the schedule, easy schedule. They didn't play their best, but they were coming out with wins. First half of the game, they weren't playing so great, but they were playing a terrible team. They were fine. They were up 20-3. Second half, all of a sudden, your mistakes come back to bite you. They've got these 2 costly turnovers. And then at the end, they just sort of eke it out by the skin of their teeth like they do in this game in general. It feels, I'm not in the locker room. I'm not, I don't have guys texting me right now, but like from a keen observer of this team for a decade, like the vibes right now, when you've got Hassan Reddick yelling at the field at the end of the game, you've got, as you have pointed out, like the A.J. Brown body language stuff, Jalen Hurts just sort of like not seeming all there. I am worried that this thing is only going to get worse.
And if it gets worse, again, it's going to matter when they get to the postseason and lose. Lose to Tampa Bay, lose to whomever.
There is not a team in the NFL that they are not capable of losing to.
Correct. And there's not really, outside of when you're looking at the San Francisco 49ers based on how they played, there's not a team there that you're looking at that they can't beat. But with how they're doing things right now, no one will have confidence. They have to rebuild that confidence in the postseason when it matters most. And that's the issue here. Because when you look at these types of things, and we all see it, we all look at this and we put our finger on it, we put the pulse on it, and we're like, all right, this thing just feels off. If and when this happens in the postseason, and I understand we're getting to the postseason and we're saying, all right, they lost. But, Bo, if this is how they end their season, get these wins, all right, great. But they go into the postseason and they lose that first round matchup, all of this stuff is just going to come right back up when I'm watching PHLY, Eagles PHLY here, and listening to Bo and Zach talk about it after the season is wrapped up. This is going to be a problem in the end. They better clean this mess up. But even if they do win the Super Bowl, Bo's not going to forget the end of that second quarter going in.
They could win 10 in a row, and I'll never forget the end of that half. Just to sort of set the big picture where things stand for the Eagles right now. At 11-4, they have a 1-game lead on the Dallas Cowboys. They
Unbelievable.
are the 3 seed at the moment, with the Detroit Lions having the tiebreaker. Our good friend Deniz, the professor, has sort of explained and plotted this all out if you follow him on Twitter. But the bottom line is that in the division, the Eagles cannot beat the Cowboys in any head-to-head tiebreaker. So they need to finish a game better. With 2 games remaining, they need to win both their games or hope that Dallas loses. Dallas has Detroit next week, so there's a possibility the Eagles could clinch the division next week if they beat Johnny Gans and the Cowboys lose to the Lions. Their tiebreaker stuff with the Lions is still up in the air. Dennis can explain all that better than I can, so follow him for that. But, unless the Niners lose tonight, you can sort of kiss the 1 seed goodbye. But, I mean, for this team to even be thinking about the possibility of the 1 seed is sort of laughable, given the way that they're playing. What did you make of Jalen tonight, Devon? He finishes 24 of 38 for 301 yards, 1 touchdown, obviously the pick 6. He also had 8 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown. I thought he came out looking good, which I sort of thought he did last week too against Seattle. And then in the second half, all of a sudden he's misfiring a little bit. The play before the pick six was a play that could have been intercepted. He sort of forced it to Dallas Goedert, almost intercepted by Okereke. And then there are times when it just doesn't seem like they're trusting him. Now, he made that beautiful throw when it was all of a sudden a 2-point game at 20-8 on 3rd and 20, I think it was.
32 yards.
Running up and he just gets it over the arm of, who was that, Isaiah Simmons to A.J. Brown. Yeah. Beautiful throw. Early on, he looked sharp to me, but as like the leader of this offense, I did not think against that defense, which is not very good. Now, they're interesting. They blitz a lot. They give you different problems to solve, but they are talent poor, and you know that stuff is coming. I did not think that was good enough.
No, sharp, as you pointed out early on, and then the mistake at the end of the second quarter there going into the halftime, that's when things started to unravel. I'll even bring up the other one, Bo, when we looked at each other and just kind of smiled and laughed as we watched the game. One of the other mistakes was the read option. He had a chance to hand the ball off on 3rd down. It was a read option. I think it was Kenneth Gainwell at this time, not even DeAndre Swift. And it was an opportunity for him to make a decision of handing it off or throwing the football. He handed it off while they were run blitzing at that point, instead of keeping the ball to hit the hot route, get the ball out quickly. And it was probably like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, somewhere around there. And he made that decision. But that's where, again, tale of two halves, starting with that play towards the end of the second quarter going into the locker room. So while the numbers look good, had the interception, which was bad, he probably should have had 2 or 3 passing touchdowns if he had given himself an opportunity to do so there by not turning the football over there. And he had the score on the ground. That's great with the tush push. Just another questionable game for Jalen Hurts when it was all said and done. Really good first half, not so good second half. He looked better. He even looked spry when he was running a little bit, getting out there in the open field, especially early on in the 3rd quarter, where he picked up I think it was the design run, and he ran right for a first down, picked up about 13 yards, and he looked really good. And you said as much when he did it. You say, "Oh, he looks pretty spry right there." We're like, okay, they yelled at each other in the locker room. They're going to come out here and they're going to fix these problems, and then they just continued to happen. And that's where I would give him right now. I give him a C on this game, just because of how good he looked in the first half before the end of it, and then not looking so good. And because even with the big throws that he made in the second half, it doesn't negate that they were in that position in the first place.
Yeah, I actually kind of agree with the point here from Poppy Nuts, who says, why are they allergic to throwing the ball in the middle of the field? The explosive play across the middle to Devontae for the touchdown. You saw a few to A.J. Brown, but there do seem like a lot of sort of forced sideline passes. I do think that there's more room for them to take advantage of in the middle of the field. From a receiver's standpoint, you talk about like what happened at halftime. It seems like they came out thinking, oh, we got to get the ball to A.J. Brown. I don't know what happened at halftime because he had 1 target in the first half, and he's got 10 in the second half. He led the way with 6 catches for 80 yards. Devontae had 4 for 79 and a touchdown. Dallas Goedert, 7 for 71. I thought Goedert looked pretty good, but like the whole A.J. Brown of it, what you've sort of, it's very on your radar, the A.J. Brown body language. What is it that is sort of attracting your eye?
You can see, number one, the shoulders. Even with the shoulder pads, you can see him drop. You can see the hand movements. While not all that, just busting out of the screen, you can see the hands there. You can see the head and the helmet shaking a little bit when something's not on target for him, or even just a bad play in general, and he's in the vicinity. The one part I don't know is you should have given me the ball, or, hey, that was a bad play.
Right.
In general. But whatever it is, we've seen this now, even when they were winning and they were undefeated all the way up to 8-1, whatever the number was, he has become a big-time target after not getting the ball early on in the season. And we started to see where it wasn't going to Dallas Goedert. And same thing for Devontae Smith. No more catches out of the backfield for DeAndre Swift, something that we talked about when it comes to the running back out of the backfield. You mentioned the middle of the field. We saw a lot last year, and maybe this escaped and went to Indianapolis with Shane Steichen. We saw a lot of middle screens last season that did work for the Eagles with Miles Sanders, with Dallas Goedert, with A.J. Brown, where the middle screen somehow develops, and they get it done to make that work. And those things have not been there. And the A.J. Brown thing is just puzzling because he's so good. He is a typical star wide receiver where give me the damn ball.
Right.
That's great.
Which you want.
That's
what you want him to be like.
That's what you want. But it comes to a certain point where that does not need to be. It's always there, yes. But also when your team is winning, when things are going your way, when things are going well, that should not be an issue whatsoever. If it is, that's a conversation in the locker room between you two, not for all of us to see, millions of people to see on the television and watching how all of it is playing out in real time. And you saw that really in the second half. In the first half, again, they look good. Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, everything is playing out really well. He's not getting the ball, sure, but you didn't see it until the second half where it was like, oh, the body language. Then he gets hurt, I thought, where he looked like he was really banged up. It's a tough guy.
I mean, he took a big hit there, but like if you're going to be the big, strong guy, let's hold on to that ball.
Exactly. It didn't even look. I didn't take the hit. I don't know if I could take that hit.
I mean, it would have put me in a hospital bed for
correct.
3 months.
But for him, it didn't look like. And I'm not saying that he was dogging it or anything.
No, of course.
No. But it was like, wow, that's.
But you expect him to hold on to the ball.
Exactly. So the body language for A.J. Brown right now for me is not good. You see it a little bit too now.
I mean, we all see it.
You saw it before, but because I've listened to you talk about it before. But man, that's something that's very glaring for me. They're going to play the Cardinals next week, the Giants the following week. They're probably going to beat those two teams, and we'll see if they win a division, what seeding they are, and all of that. But man, it's there. It's glaring, and I don't like it.
Now, if the Eagles are going to turn things around in the playoffs, there is one thing that I think they maybe need to do, and that is build the offense around Grant Calcaterra.
Yes.
2 catches for 21 yards in this game, both first downs. His only 2 targets of the season. Let's build the whole thing there. Three positive things for the Eagles in this game. Grant Calcaterra, Britton Covey, great return,
the MVP at first half.
and your boy DeAndre Swift, who was really good in this game. And why didn't he get the ball more? Totally fair. 20 carries for 92 yards and a touchdown. And you could tell the one touchdown he scored that was then called back for the knee, just like barely grazing the ground. You could tell like the force that he went into the end zone on that one with, that it was like, I am tired of being touchdown cucked by Jalen Hurts from the 1 yard line. Like, let me get my touchdown, please. Then they pull it away from him. He ends up getting one later. So you feel good for him. But I agree with you, the general sentiment that they are not trusting him enough in the flow of the offense when sometimes they are stalling out. He has been really, really better than I think they are giving him credit for.
Yeah, he really has. And I thought the first one, when he got that, after the big Britton Covey return, I thought he was going to get in right there. When he busted through that line and he got down to the one, great play by Banks, the rookie, to really push him back and to prevent him from getting into the end zone. Jalen Hurts steals the touchdown. Right. He goes in there on the push, gets it done. He had another one. I thought he could have had a second or should have had a second touchdown. That one right there that Bo was talking about, and then he ends up getting into the end zone later on a great run, great blocking, great finish by diving into the end zone without allowing his knee to touch. Also because he probably did not want the touchdown to be stolen from him again from Jalen Hurts because he was not getting the ball back on the 1 inch line to get into the end zone. If they continue to give him the football, you have one of the better offensive lines in football, even with Sua Opeta in there for Landon Dickerson. They still look pretty good overall. They created lanes for the rush, whether it was Gainwell or Swift. Continue to give him the ball. And once again, that was how they were winning early on. After they realized they didn't give him the ball enough in game 1, game 2, between games 2 and 3, he had, over 300 yards on the ground in those 2. And for a good portion of that, even though they weren't giving them the same volume, he was still in the top 5 in rushing in the NFL overall, having arguably his best season as a runner. And by the way, folks, he has been healthy, knock on wood, all season long. And are you trying to preserve him? Maybe so. But guess what? Right now, they need him to win these games, and they cannot go in that direction. So they need to continue to give DeAndre Swift the football.
Yeah, I mentioned it last week that it made my ears perk up when Joe Buck mentioned that last week, that maybe the Eagles are trying to keep DeAndre Swift fresh because they think he's worn down a little bit as the season has gone on. He does have more carries than he typically does, but he's not saying that without having heard that from the sort of pre-broadcast meetings.
He doesn't look it.
I agree with you.
He doesn't look it.
He
still looks explosive. Whenever he gets the foot, and he's making
But
good
also,
decisions.
like, patient. Yeah, there are a couple of runs in this game where he's just very patiently waiting to then just get 4 yards up the middle. And that is not the player that I thought he was.
Yeah, he's very patient. He's picking the right lane. Miles Sanders, we saw a play early. He got about 8 yards. And we looked, and I said to Bo, what few words that we did speak to each other during the game, I said, Bo, Miles Sanders would have tried to bounce that to the other side.
That's a 3-yard loss.
And that's a 3-yard loss right there. Instead, DeAndre Swift gets the first down, I believe, on that 8-yard carry. So give him the football. Continue to let him eat and see where it takes you, because it all goes hand in hand. His rushes leads to Jalen Hurts' rushes and also leads to completions down the field. And Barbara, I will not stop talking football because I love it. I'm not sticking to basketball. I saw that.
Yeah, don't put
Come on,
in a
Barb.
box. Come on.
Come on, Barb.
All right. Well, I do know that like Eagles fans are very angry right now, and that's okay. But the good news is there is somebody coming to town next week, not Santa Claus, who will be a nice vessel for you to be angry at, because there's a case to be made that the entire reason the Eagles are in this situation right now is because Jonathan Gannon did not tell the truth about where he was going with the Arizona Cardinals. Then all of a sudden you got Sean Desai, then you got Matt Patricia. The building is on fire because nobody agrees with each other. Everybody's throwing haymakers around. Well, guess what? You can boo Jonathan Gannon next week if you want. Just buy tickets to the game on Game Time, because Game Time is the place to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. It's fast and easy with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. They've got flash deals and last-minute tickets. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Images of seat views, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. It is the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, just 2 taps and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Tickets make great holiday gifts if you want to sneak one in at the last second. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And I'll follow up with the Jonathan Gannon conversation. Last year, if he would have won the big game, helped the Birds win the big game, you might have had the opportunity to buy a bobblehead of Jonathan Gannon had the defense done their part, but they did not.
Well, how about that?
And then the defensive coaching situation all playing out the way that it did. Well, if you still want to get a bobblehead and so many other things, go to our friends at FOCO, leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment in merchandise, with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and much, much more. Best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. It's football and tailgating season. Maybe you were out there today with your overall, hoodie, hat, sunglasses, the bags, everything you needed for the game today. If you need it for next weekend's game against that Arizona squad, make sure you hit up FOCO. FOCO has hooked PHLY up and provided awesome pieces for our sets right here behind us, and you can have those too. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description for all non-presale items. Use the promo code PHLY10 for 10% off. Again, use the code PHLY10 for 10% off. I should have checked and see if they had some holiday sweaters for me and Bo here for the show. And
yeah, that's what I said in the description of the show. This game was uglier than a Christmas sweater.
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the defense. You know, this is an easy task in this game. In the first half, it's DeVito. And I did think one of the funniest things that happened in this game was Pam Oliver having to come out and say that Brian Daboll told her at halftime the thing he was really upset about was the kicking game, and then he replaces his quarterback. Like, I mean, come on, Brian, don't throw Pam under the bus like that. Like,
right. She said, she
brutal.
even said it. She said, I spoke to him and
he
didn't tell
anything.
me.
Yeah.
Right.
Brutal. All of that said, there are some ugly things that happened in the second half. Obviously, Reed Blankenship letting Darius Slayton get past him for that 69-yard touchdown pass, absolutely inexcusable. And we can talk about like the performance overall. Matt Patricia didn't solve anything in this game. The task, again, was easy. But the most important thing that happened in this game is what didn't happen in this game, and that is with this defensive line that we said this was the get-right game. They have been struggling. You've got all these first-round picks and highly paid guys who are supposed to be impact players. Well, guess what? Against this offense that had been sacked at the highest rate in the league, they dropped back to pass 32 times. There was 1 sack, and it was Shaq Leonard. No defensive lineman really even sniffed the quarterback, whether it was DeVito or Tyrod Taylor in this game. And maybe you want to tell me they were selling out for stopping Saquon Barkley. They didn't do a great job of that necessarily either. But the lack of pass rush from that group in this game is maybe like the most worrisome thing that happened, that even when this seemed like the easiest chance, they couldn't even do that.
Yeah, and again, in the first half, where before he was replaced, DeVito's someone who can run a little bit. They flushed him out of the pocket a few times, but there was never a real threat that he was going to be sacked. And he was escaping, making sure that he did not. And why was the pressure not there? It wasn't because of his fleet of foot and getting out of the pocket and making sure that he had enough time to extend the play. It was just simply because they did not get there. And that was a problem. You saw Hassan Reddick get there quickly, but that was more for a run stop on Saquon Barkley. And also one flush out for DeVito that stood out in the first half. But other than that, they have not been able to get to the quarterback. You saw a nice play from Nolan Smith, but that was, again, on a play, on a skill player, not the quarterback once again. So the pass rush just simply has not been there. That was one of our keys to the game that we were talking about, where they have to put some pressure on DeVito. And while they were up comfortably 17-3 and 20-3 at the break, he did nothing, which is why he was replaced, but they also did not bring him to the ground. Did they necessarily need it in this game for this game? No, but they needed it again for this game to get it going, to have something happen. I don't think I heard Josh Sweat's name called all night long, evening long. I did not hear Josh Sweat's name called from the television, from us saying Josh Sweat, because he just wasn't there. I think the only time we heard it was in the introduction, and that was it.
It's now 5 games in a row without a sack for Josh Sweat. Last one coming at the end of the game against the Cowboys before the bye. I'm going to stipulate that this is completely speculation. I am just guessing. But I think the thing that Hassan Reddick was yelling back and forth about with Sirianni, because he was also doing it, the broadcast did a good job showing him yelling to the sideline a play or two before. And Jeremiah Washburn is in the circle with Sirianni there. You notice that at the end of the game, they switched sides, which they did against the Cowboys, and Josh Sweat got the sack against Dak Prescott. I think Hassan Reddick wanted to be back on his left side, and maybe the players have the autonomy to do that themselves. But, Hassan Reddick had 4 quarterback hits in this game. He was rushing effectively. Josh Sweat was not. I kind of wonder if that's what was going on there.
And the funny part, as you say that, I go back to the Kevin Byard. I think it was after the Dallas game, where it came out that they talked to the defensive coordinator, and they were saying, the report was, hey, they can basically give their input on what we think we can do.
Right.
They trust Jalen Hurts on the offensive side to maybe call some plays, certain things like that. If they're trusting their players to do so, and you just said they have the autonomy to do that, why are you questioning it there unless you absolutely see something when it comes to Tyrod Taylor? Still a right-handed quarterback, not a lefty quarterback, but maybe there was something that he saw, Hassan Reddick, for him to feel confident in saying, I need to be back on the other side. And maybe it wasn't just for him, but it was also for Josh Sweat on the other side to have that pressure to get to the quarterback and maybe force a bad throw, get the sack, or whatever it may have been. That is, again, something that really stood out when you pointed it out towards the end of the game, that it just came right back to me, the defensive players having the ability, or the coaching staff trusting the players to tell them what they see while they are the ones out there on the field. And by the way, that goes into every sport, where it's, hey, basketball, baseball, hey, I see this little thing, trust me on this one. The same way they say, I didn't throw the flag, you throw the challenge flag, he caught the football, or maybe that shot block was a goaltender, it wasn't, trust me on this one. Trusting your players there, everything doesn't seem to be working anyway the way you're doing it. And if a player maybe is telling you that they see something, and being on the other side is more beneficial, not just for him, but the entire defensive front as they rush the quarterback, then maybe, just maybe, it's something that they should be looking into.
The more I think about it, could that possibly be it? Because if it was that much of a big deal, I would imagine they would just switch themselves. Maybe it was about what they were calling. But for him to specifically be so upset, I'm sure that we will hear something about it if he speaks in the locker room. We'll talk to Zach.
Can I get to that 69-yard touchdown?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Here was the thing with that as it played out. Watching, you say, okay, he got him over the top. He beat a safety over the top. Shouldn't have been matched up because of the speed with Slayton, right?
Right.
But it was the air underneath the football, the adjustment of slowing down to the football,
Yeah, there was no...
and catching it that way, and he was still about 2-3 yards off of him.
And there was that one
It was
earlier to
unbelievable.
Waller where like they could add another walk-in touchdown.
It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And again, safeties, I get it. They're not necessarily used for their speed and all that. But on that play, I don't know what happened where he was matched up with that speedster down the left sideline. Taylor put enough air under the football. Perfect pass. Perfect execution. It was just more of, wow, he can adjust, turn his body, not lose the football, and still nowhere near him as he walks into that end zone for that deep play. That was a bad one. That was a bad one.
Now, listen, it is true that the Eagles were down at linebacker. They had no Nick Morrow and no Zach Cunningham. I think if you are complaining about not having Nick Morrow, you've got bigger problems. Shaq Leonard at times looked good in this game when he could just come down right into the box against the run. But when he was in space, boy, did he look slow. There was that one where Tyrod Taylor just sort of runs around him, and he looks like he's running in quicksand. Ben Van Sumeren got some time in this game. There were a couple plays that sort of made me laugh because he was like going just the complete wrong direction of the play. But he did make a few splash plays as well. You saw Nolan Smith getting reps there in these like 5-1-5 lineups, which, that's not the position he was drafted to play.
Right.
It didn't necessarily look like he was super instinctive there, but he's certainly athletic. Obviously, the Eagles leaned heavily on Sidney Brown in this game as sort of a make-do for being light at linebacker. Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks and James Bradbury on the outside. We saw some situations where Bradbury was inside, I think, when they went in dime, matching up on Darren Waller. There were a couple times where he was in coverage and Waller dropped the ball or it just wasn't there, but then he also got beat on a couple of those plays. At safety, you've got Byard and Blankenship, who otherwise played okay, except for that play. Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? So, I mean, by success rate, this was their best defensive performance of the season. You have to keep in mind that was the terrible offense they were going up against by EPA per drive. It was like their 5th best performance of the season. Again, terrible offense. They were gifted a touchdown by the Boston Scott fumble, but I don't think you could watch that game in the second half and think like, oh, this defense is ready to turn it on and be a difference-making unit against any good offense.
No, not the way we saw them against the Miami Dolphins, the Kansas City Chiefs. No, absolutely not. It just doesn't look good right now. I thought Keely Ringo
I like Ringo.
I thought he looked pretty solid out there. They didn't really attack him much, but there was a reason too, because when DeVito did have time early on and they had time to throw, he didn't throw it because guys were not open. So that's a pretty good job by your corners overall. The Bradbury stuff stood out because he was in the middle of the field against the tight end. And while Waller did drop 1 or 2, Bradbury, they weren't afraid to throw in that direction is basically what I'm saying here. So they still have a lot of questions. The linebacker situation, we talked about it pregame, that's not good. BVS, and you can call him that, whatever he was, I'm laughing at Bo as we're watching the game because he's like, he's lost out there right now. And it was evident. He's just running around in circles. And he made one good play where he actually did attack the gap, fill that hole pretty quickly, and make a play on, I think it was Saquon Barkley at that point. But there's nothing that is going to correct that problem, the linebacker problem, in season here now, this late going into the playoffs. You just hope that the defensive front can do their part, things tighten up with the safeties and the corners and the secondary overall, and that they just simply make good enough plays. And if they are going to be attacked with the tight ends or some of those other receivers across the middle, it's that we'll give you the play, but once we, of course, get into the red zone, you're only getting 3 points out of this. We're not going to allow you to beat us over the top. You can beat us short. You can beat us over the middle, but you're not going to take us down over the top, and that's the best that you can really ask for, getting that push from up front and hoping that whatever completions they do have in the middle are not going to destroy them, especially once they get into the red zone and not allowing 6 and 7 or 8, instead just giving up that 3, because That's just what it is. And when they go into that nickel and dime situation where you maybe take one of those linebackers off the field and hope Sidney Brown is out there playing well, Avonte Maddox comes back and you can open things up a little bit more with how you want to have your personnel. And no penalties. No penalties.
Yeah. And they did give up a few third and long, third and medium conversions to that terrible Giants offense in this game. If we're playing body language, Doctor, something that is very much on my radar from this game, he had the slow to run off the field penalty. He had the offsides penalty, which he got lucky on the Giants getting called for a false start instead. But there were also a couple plays to me where for the very first time, I had not seen this at all from him all season long. It seemed to me like Jaylen Carter was loafing a little bit. He just didn't see, because he has been really impressive from a try hard down the field plays where defensive tackles are not always hustling as much as he has been. And in this game, it seemed like he didn't really have the juice. And, you could tell me that this is rookie wall or something like that. But as we just sort of parse, what is going on in that building right now, to see Jaylen Carter sort of backsliding like that was something that caught my eye.
Body language doctor says since the bye week, it seems like he's kind of where you feel like maybe you should be a little rejuvenated and get that extra burst of energy and extra boost. It seems like since the bye week, and I'm not talking about the stuff off the field,
Sure.
Yeah, all of that. It's just more of that's where it's, it just seems like it really stands out to him. He's not making as many plays. Even when I kind of got lucky maybe on that offsides false start thing that happened there in the third quarter, because that didn't seem like much. I understand that the officials in the NFL are really watching the centers for Jason Kelce got hit with it last week, where he moved the ball, and tonight Schmidt, I think it was just more of his head movement, snapping that football. Jalen Hurts has to be a little bit better. We're not hearing much from Jordan Davis. I remember one play where he stopped Saquon Barkley or DeVito, where he grabbed him quickly by the leg and dropped him, where there seemed to be a lot of space up the middle.
And that was the play where Vince Zimmerman was running the entire other direction.
Right.
Yeah.
But other than that, man, Fletcher Cox has really been the only one that's been consistent. And it made me even think about this, because I know I said this to you and Zach last week, where I thought Hargrave was the number one option to figure out what you need to do in the offseason, more than Edwards, more than Epps,
right,
and even Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, because of how much I felt like he set the tone. You had the rotation. You could still draft a defensive tackle to be a part of your rotation, because we have seen where Milton Williams is somebody who can help give you some help there in the middle, and the rotation overall, the waves that they've thrown in. Jaylen Carter has taken a step back a little bit. And yes, this is his rookie season, so maybe that has hit a wall. But, I mean, maybe Javon Hargrave was a big piece of this defense, of what they did to kind of shore up that middle. Let's not forget that he had double-digit sacks last season. So when we're talking about getting pressure on the quarterback and getting there and bringing them down to the ground, Javon Hargrave did that. And you want to know what else is pretty good for Javon Hargrave right now? The San Francisco 49ers along that defensive front line, where he still looks good and still looks fresh. So it seems like right now they're missing that other guy in the middle with Fletcher Cox to get that work done. You were not going to duplicate 70 sacks last season, but it's the pressure that you're putting on them to maybe force you getting more takeaways because of the forced throws, smacking the arm, ball movement, where it pops up in the air, that type of thing. It's late in the season, and it might be, again, revisionist history where I'm pointing out something that I said before, but that's the type of player it seems like their defensive front is missing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they also need more from Sweat, as we talked about.
Yes.
And as things are sort of starting to trickle out of the locker room, some reports, A.J. Brown declined to speak after the game. All he said was, "I got nothing nice to say."
Okay, about what?
Neither do I.
Yeah, but we still had to do this, AJ. You're in your car. You might as well come do the show with us.
Oh, man.
I'll wait.
I'm telling you, man, the vibes could not be worse.
Nothing
even if they
to
lost
say.
that game, the vibes could not be worse. Let me tell you about Rocket Money before we keep going. Rocket Money, I use Rocket Money. Saves me money. It will save you money. Did you find it found subscriptions for me that I didn't realize that were duplicative with my wife, or that I just wasn't using anymore. Like I told Zach the other day, I from like an old work account and an old personal account, I was paying for White Pages twice. What am I doing? I'm just throwing money away like a jabroni. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills. I can see all of my subscriptions in one place, and if I see something I don't want, I can cancel it with one tap. You never have to get on the phone with customer service. That's the other great thing they do. You don't have to waste your time doing it. They will handle all that stuff for you. They will even try to get you a refund for the last couple of months of wasted money to negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. All you have to do is take a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has helped save its members an average of $720 with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. Stop wasting your money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/PHLY. That's rocketmoney.com/PHLY. rocketmoney.com/PHLY. All right, if I am trying my hardest to come out of the disappointment and talk myself into this team can make a run in the playoffs, I don't think it's like you snap your fingers and you can play like last year, because we have been waiting for that all season long. This team does not have that team in them. The only hope, I think, is like you sort of get a favorable schedule for the playoffs. You win the division, you get a home game. You don't have to play the Cowboys and the Niners, both of them. You only have to play one of them. And you get a little bit lucky. And by that, I don't mean like you just get tipped balls your way, but their third down performance on defense, which has been so bad, maybe you get a little bit of a lucky bump there. The turnovers, which have been so unfortunate for them this year, maybe you get a little bit lucky there. The red zone on offense, you get a little bit of a bounce there. Those things that are due for regression are very meaningful for them, and if they get just a little bump, that's fine. But like, other than that, under the surface, I don't see this team being able to turn it on, and a lot can change between now and the middle of January and the end of January. Maybe they flip something on, but like having watched this team closely season after season for over a decade now, I find it really hard to believe that they're going to be able to turn this around and like flip a switch that they have not been able to flip yet.
No, I'm with you. And the only thing that I could say is show the first 29 minutes of the first half where they look pretty good, albeit the opponent. Again, it's about what they do. It's about how sharp they look. And they scored on their first 3 possessions. Jalen Hurts looked pretty good. DeAndre Swift looked solid. Smith looked good. Same thing for Goddard. Britton Covey doing his part. Jake Elliott looking solid. You go with the first half and some of those plays there. If you want to pull something from the second half, just once again, some plays to Goddard. Swift on the ground. Hitting A.J. Brown consistently, where he didn't miss A.J. Brown all that much. Yes, 6, 7 catches in the second half. He had one really bad one. That's where the body language doctor stepped up and said, look at that. And that was really the only one. Early on, he missed, A.J. Brown just simply, the angle that it looked like from the TV copy, it just went through his hands, it looked like early in the first half. Remember that one?
Yes.
It just looked like, and he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. So that wasn't even a body language doctor saying, this is all bad. It was just, okay, A.J. Brown, he can have that one because that's not what he does. That's the only thing that I could really take from this game without looking at the Cardinals and the Giants again coming up in these final 2 matchups going into the postseason. That's all I have, because everything else says that round 1, they lose, and we're sitting here, or Zach and Bo are sitting here. I might just request to be on the show with them because I'll be so ticked off.
We have all of PHY on that one.
Yeah, it's just the round table to get this whole thing done. But right now, again, this is what we were calling for in the pregame. Show some good things where we can pull little things, but for them, they can pull some bigger things to make themselves feel better about their performance going forward, and they did not.
Yeah, I mean, they are still very talented in many places. If they can, what feels like a 53 men, 53 cabs situation right now, if they can come together and outplay the guys across from them, sure. But I'm not so sure I see that coming. Zach Berman is with us now, live from Lincoln Financial Field. He is straight off of the locker room and talking to Nick Sirianni. Zach, let me just start by asking, are the vibes in the locker room as bad as they looked on the field?
So it's interesting you ask that because I'm obviously in the stadium. I'm not watching it on television. I have that cut up. I have the feed, but I'm more tuned in to what I'm watching. And I received a lot of messages after the game about like the sideline demeanor. And so I actually asked Nick Sirianni, like the television cameras caught you on that final drive fairly animated, and he said he's animated as it is. He said, that's part of it. Sometimes, between players and coaches, player and player, coaches and coaches, you're more animated at a given time. He says this is where like the connection part of it comes in. All right, so that's their answer. As far as my observation, this is not a team that like left this game thinking, "Oh man, we told you so." Like, when's the parade? This is a team. The terms Devontae Smith said they need to clean this up. They have 2 weeks to go to clean this up. Jordan Mailata called this a stepping stone. AJ Brown didn't speak to give you a sense of. I'm not saying the vibes are bad. Like, there's a sense of relief. They finally won, right? But excuse me. We were what, like 45 minutes after the game or so. I was deciding, do I come up here now or is there more people to talk to? There's really one person left in that locker room to speak, and that's Jalen Hurts. But Jalen Hurts was at his locker in the corner speaking to Jason Kelsey. Jason Kelsey had not yet showered, right? Like, still in his playing gear, if you will, not the pads, but hadn't showered. Him and Jalen were talking, and like some team officials were like purposely standing in the way, right? Not as if they were guarding, but like to make sure that we can't kind of see around, right? But yeah, that's that, or at least that's what it appeared. I saw Jason sitting in the corner by Jalen's locker. People were waiting for Jalen to speak. At that point, that's when I came up here. I wouldn't say there are bad vibes, but it's certainly not. It's not the 2022 Eagles right now, right? It's not the 2017 Eagles, having their choreographed touchdown celebrations. Last year's team is winning by double-digit margins every week. A matter of fact, it looked like it tonight. They were up 20-7, or I'm sorry, they were up 20-3. 20-3, most points they've scored at halftime all year. For us to be having this conversation about like them just outlasting the Giants having a play at the end to tie it, I did not see that coming in the second half.
Zach, speaking of the vibes or lack thereof when it comes to feeling good after a victory, two things. Your thoughts, number one, on the final minute of the second quarter where Jalen Hurts escaped the pocket and does not get out of bounds, or we can take it a little further back as Bo and I were talking about not calling timeout, number one. And then they call the timeout about 15, 20 seconds later. And then secondly, if Nick Sirianni, as you listened and spoke to him, had anything to say about the execution down the stretch there at the end of the second quarter.
Yeah, he did. A matter of fact, it's a good question. He brought that up himself because he was asked specifically about Jalen not getting out of bounds. And he said he puts that sequence on him too, because he said he should have banged the timeout earlier. He said he cost the team about 15 seconds. It was actually, a little bit more than that. But yeah, that if memory serves, they had the ball with 58 seconds to go and 2 timeouts, and I think they ran 3 plays or 4 plays, and they got bailed out by a penalty at the end there, right? Because I don't think even if that delay of game wasn't called on the Giants, I don't think the Eagles would have gotten in position to spike it. So they kind of got bailed out there. Nick said that he didn't give an explanation as to why he didn't call the timeout. He just said he needs to manage the game better there. Too much time went off before he called the timeout. I also think that like Jalen can't take a sack in that situation, right? Then they're forced to use the timeout there. And then Jalen, instead of running out of bounds, runs inbounds. I obviously am up here now. I haven't heard Jalen. I imagine that will come up. I saw him kind of pointing to himself afterwards as if like he knows that's on him.
Yeah, as if anybody could have thought it was on anybody else.
But the reality is we're in week 16 right now. And like these, so there's an expression that I'm going to use here on this show that I'll probably write and I'll probably frame it this way to Nick. Like, at what point do you stop saying things are uncharacteristic and start saying this is characteristic of who you are? Because by this point in the year, you can't say we're making these uncharacteristic mistakes. Like, if it's happening on Christmas, it's who you are, basically, especially if it's repeated errors. So the sloppiness. Now, there's an argument to be made that they can flip a switch, right? But we always heard that about the Sixers too. We always heard like they're a flip the switch team, right? It doesn't always work that way. So,
yeah, I mean, to your point, Zach, every week it is like these unforgivable mistakes, whether they are really bad penalties, really bad situational awareness. Now you've got guys yelling at each other, yelling at the coaches. If a team was ever to look like it was poorly coached, this is what it would look like.
So yes, I hear you. Now I'm not as reactive to like the yelling at
game
the
sample size.
No. Please let me finish. The sideline part of it. I asked the question because I know it's on fans' minds, but it's a football sideline. Like this is, they're not communicating in whispers, right? So I don't have a problem so much with that. Like I like highly competitive people having real conversations, intense moments. Like that's part of football. That's part of sports from what I understand. What bothers me more than the sideline, the sideline stuff, that's more like the drama for us to discuss. The tangible things are when you're making errors throughout the game in high leverage situations, whether it's the timeouts, it's running out of bounds. It's they've had times this year when they should have stayed inbounds and they didn't, and it can't keep happening. Or penalties or turnovers. Like, look, I know there's human error involved in football sometimes. When you're up 20-3 and you're starting the ball in the second half, you can't run into your guy and knock the ball out of his hands, right? Like, the pick six, that's unfortunate. Dallas Goedert said it's going to keep him up at night. But the problem is that's not the exception, right? Like Jalen Hurts now has the amount of turnovers that he has, and that's a team stat right now, right? Because there are times when there's an exchange, but they're minus, I think, well, they had that interception at the end. So they're -7 on the season. That is crazy. That's near the bottom of the league. And I'm not saying that keeps you from advancing deep. Like the Kansas City Chiefs are the bottom of the league in turnover differential. That's also why the Chiefs haven't locked up the 1 seed with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback, right? So point being that, yeah, I am with you there. They can't keep making these types of errors and like saying they're going to clean it up. When are you going to clean it up? I mean, sooner or later they're going to be cleaning up the locker room, right? Because that's the way this is going.
You should use that that should be the closing line of your story tonight.
That should be the kicker. Yeah. I mean, that seems a little like overreactive, but maybe so.
Who else did you talk to in the locker room, Zach?
Yeah. Excuse me. Spoke to Jordan Mailata. Like I said, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. I was there for Sirianni. I was in on Kelsey, but there was a big scrum. I didn't hear much of him. A handful of other people that I was like floating around, but I really wanted to and then I wanted to speak to AJ Brown, but he was not speaking. So it was interesting hearing from Devontae. Like I know you both say that he's often a reliable narrator. He said he is not satisfied right now. Like he says they have 2 games to go to fix this. He thinks they'll fix this. I said, what does this offense need to look like to leave you satisfied? And he said that they can't be spotting teams 14 points. They can't be making these types of errors late in game, or throughout the games. They can't be having these penalties, turnovers, things like that. And we talk each week: turnovers, penalties, situational football, right? These keep coming up. The thing I'll say from talking to people, that drive after the pick six was a critical drive. And on that drive, there was a 3rd and 20 play that Jalen Hurts made. Jordan Mailata referenced it. Nick Sirianni referenced it, where it was just a huge play by Jalen AJ. And the game might be different if they don't convert that. Like Nick Sirianni said, there's not a lot in the playbook for 3rd and 20. At that point, it was the score was 20-18. The crowd was booing. Crowd's chanting, "Run the ball," which, by the way, Nick heard. Nick said he could have had 2 headsets on and he would have heard it. He said they have to understand sometimes you just got to let Jalen control the line of scrimmage, right? Like he has options there. I mean, Nick didn't say this. I'm telling our audience.
That sounds like he's sort of passing the buck.
No, we know they have RPOs, right? So like there's an option to run it, there's an option to pass it based on the look that the defense is presenting. We've had this conversation in the past, in particular in 2021 when they were a pass heavy team and they kept referencing the RPOs. And I think one thing you said back then was like, yeah, defenses want you to pass the ball, right? Like that's why they're giving you that look. I don't know if that's the case here. But he said you kind of have to quiet down sometimes to let Jalen operate. But that drive was huge. And then DeAndre Swift finishes it off. DeAndre had a big game, but I think like I don't want to say the story of the game is that drive, but 2018 at that point the Giants had scored 15 points. If the Eagles go 3 and out there, we might be talking about a loss right now.
Great catch by A.J. Brown on that throw. Great throw by Jalen Hurts, but here we are again where he's not speaking after the game. It's a win still. Frustration, of course, where you have a star receiver. Yeah. And sure, you like the emotion from the player, but this is now multiple times with him after speaking during the week where he mentioned he needed to be better when he had his social media outburst the way that he did, like some of the others. But yet and still, when things don't go like he wants, understandably so, overall for his team where they didn't look sharp and they still have to clean things up, here we are again.
Fair point. Not disagreeing with you, Devon. I'm simply providing context for the audience here. When he didn't speak earlier this season, one thing he said then was that like he would rather kind of cool off, speak when he has his wits about him, than say something really emotional. Now, one could argue like that's the exact point of the post-game locker room, like is to get these raw emotions. A.J. Brown is especially emotional. He will tell you that, right? Like when he's feeling it after a game, he probably I would love to hear what's on his mind, right? That's why I was waiting by his locker. But he said after week 2, I think it was, that he doesn't want to he doesn't want to say something that he's going to regret, basically, right? So it's like those married couples that say like, let's just talk about this in the morning. Like let's let this cool down. Right. It's kind of like that. And so I promise you, I'll be by his locker on Wednesday and Thursday and we'll see what happens. Yeah.
All right, Zach, we got to let Devon get going to prep for the Sixers post-game show, which we will have here on PHLY. Any final thoughts before you and I talk again tomorrow at 2:00 on the PHLY Eagles podcast?
I would just say this is not the locker room that I expected. I expected more of an I told you so. Like, well, we finally won. What's the big deal? Stop making it seem like this is a loss. But from the veteran players that I spoke to, they very much felt like this is something that there's still a lot of work to do. Still needs to be cleaned up, and it was an interesting juxtaposition because, and I'll probably have this in the story, they had the Christmas music piped in over the loudspeakers in the locker room. So you have that like Mariah Carey, like all I want for Christmas is you, and it's like this cheerful song, and you have like and you have Devontae Smith saying, no, I'm not satisfied. We need to get this fixed, right? So yeah, it was very much like it was a Merry Christmas in the fact that they won, but I do think they're aware that they're not where they need to be right now.
All right, Zach Berman, we look forward to reading your story on allphly.com. If the Eagles don't clean this up soon enough, they'll be cleaning up their locker room.
I might use that line. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas to all.
Merry
Christmas, to all, good night. Right?
And to you, a good night. Yes, all right. Devon, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this game, share these askance glances with each other.
See,
and talk about
we're
it.
already on the same. We now know that about each other.
Yeah.
We just look at each other and like,
Just like, ooh.
okay. Or if it's a good play, we still look at each other and say,
like that, like the DeAndre Swift play at the end of the game when he runs all around and then still slides down and bounds.
Yeah.
Maybe he should have gotten the ball more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Not Miles Sanders.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry,
all
Miles.
right. So the Eagles win. That's the good news. Merry Christmas. The Eagles remain a game ahead of the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East. But other than that, not a ton to feel good about as they prepare for what looks, again, like a very easy close to the schedule. You've got the Cardinals at home next week. And if you're really lucky, if the Eagles win next week, and the Cowboys lose to the Lions, maybe you consider benching the starters for Week 18 because you know you've got a game the next week and that turf is notoriously terrible. You don't want anybody getting hurt. You probably don't do that because then you're still maybe playing for the 2 seed, but something to consider. Anyway, that's just a small thing as the Eagles try to clean up the pieces from another very uneven performance, but a win nonetheless. They are 11-4, and we'll be here to talk about it all week on PHLY. Zach and I tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Stay tuned tonight after the Sixers game for the post-game show with Devon and Kyle Newbeck. We thank everybody for spending your holiday with us. We will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, we love you.